All right, folks, it is 2:02 p.m. Well, other people trickle in, but we can go ahead and get started. Hello, thank you for joining us. My name is Clifton Yin with the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains, or MESC for short, as part of the U.S. Department of Energy. Thanks for being here. Next slide, please. Yeah, before we get started, I have to note that this webinar will be recorded and will be published online later. So I don't think people will be able to chime in, but just so you know, if you do end up speaking, your voice will be recorded. So if you don't want your voice recorded, don't speak up. Ditto, sharing your image, your camera or phone, you can turn off your image if you don't want to be have your image recorded. So thank you for being here. Next slide, please. So the impetus for this presentation actually was a grant opportunity that MESC currently has open. So if you haven't heard about it, check out our website online, or you can also go to iac.university. Basically, we have a funding opportunity for small, medium-sized manufacturers, $300,000 per manufacturer at a 50% cost share. And this 50% cost share part kind of got us thinking that it would be a good idea to try to educate and inform folks about the opportunities out there. I think for a lot of SMMs, there are a host of financial mechanisms to choose from. It can be very difficult to navigate and figure out what's right for you. So that's why we decided to have this call. Next slide, please. Again, if you haven't heard about this opportunity, please go to iac.university or check out the MESC website online. There's two streams, one for funding and one to qualify assessors for future funding that perform assessments that'll be eligible for future funding. We're excited about this opportunity and again for being an inspiration for this webinar. Next slide, please. So we're pleased to be joined by Palomi Nandi from Oak Ridge National Laboratory. I worked with Palomi actually for many years before. She's a technical account manager as part of the Better Plants program. She works for Oak Ridge's Energy Efficiency Research and Analysis Group. So she'll give a presentation about third-party financing, walking us through all these different options. We'll do Q&A at the end, time permitting, so feel free to enter your questions in the chat to everyone. And if we have time at the end, I'll kind of run through some of them. But Palomi, thanks for joining us, and please take it away.
Thank you so much, Clifton, and thank you everybody for joining us today. As Clifton mentioned, I am part of Better Plants program, so I'm a technical account manager. So I'll go through what the program is about a little bit in brief, and then we'll dive into what's the meat of the presentation, essentially going through the different financial options that are available through third party. So what is Better Plants program? So it's a DOE funded program that can help, that usually helps US manufacturing industry to save money and save energy, essentially. So we help our partners to be more energy efficient and reduce their carbon footprint. We also help reducing water usage and then as well as waste. So that's essentially what we do. We call ourselves the technical account managers, and we are your technical resource to help you kind of achieve your decarbonization or energy efficiency goal. So what the program does is manufacturing industry who take part in this program, it's a voluntary and free to participate program. Partners set a long-term energy efficiency or a decarbonization along with water and waste goals with us. And we will help you kind of understand what are some of the tools, resources, provide the technical expertise kind of to help you reach your goal. As part of Better Plants program, we have also launched the Better Climate Challenge, which focuses on carbon emission reduction. So partners are encouraged to set a 50% scope 1, scope 2 emission reduction goal over 10 years. And if you want to know more about this program, again, feel free to reach out to me. My information will be available at the end of the presentation, but this is a really good program to take part in. As part of decarbonization, more and more companies slowly have started setting these ambitious decarbonization goals. Recently, in September 2022, U.S. Department of Energy came up with this industrial decarbonization roadmap, which kind of identified these 5 major pillars that can help you decarbonize your manufacturing industry. It doesn't matter what size you are, but these are some of the main pillars that you would use. So it would be energy efficiency, electrifying your fossil fuel system and moving to electric systems, and then kind of counterbalancing that electric energy by buying renewable energy. Or you can switch from fossil fuel to low carbon fuel. And last but not least, you can also do carbon capture and sequestration. All these have different barriers. So we also, as part of Better Climate Challenge and Low Carbon Pilot, which was a predecessor of the Better Climate Challenge, we spoke to numerous partners. And what we heard, and you can see here, we spoke to about 30 partners, manufacturing industry, and what they kind of identified as the major barriers are listed here. But corporate financing to decarbonize their manufacturing industry was one of the main barriers that came up again and again. The other barrier that I have highlighted here is availability of technology, the operation cost, and infrastructure readiness. All of these also require huge amount of investment from manufacturing industry to reach their decarbonization goals. Some common themes that we have heard is people don't know where to invest when they are decarbonizing, how to get that money for decarbonization, as well as because these projects are so high in cost, they are outcompeted when kind of competing for the internal funding from an organization. And because companies' main idea is for they are constantly trying to grow, they're not in the business of being decarbonizing, right? So they are constantly kind of putting decarbonization in the back burner because they are putting in the money for their growth, as well as all these technologies, all these if you talk about renewable, you talk about electrification, any pillars that you talk about, the landscape is changing very fast and very quickly, and it's very complex. And so to help with understanding how you can finance some of these decarbonization projects, what Better Buildings, Better Plans program did was develop this tool, what we call the Financing Navigator tool. Again, all of my slides usually have this link in the bottom that you will find. So you'll find all the source for the information that I'm sharing today. So this is a really good page on the Better Buildings website solution website that you can go to and kind of learn about the different funding strategies that you can use within your organization. It talks about internal fundings, but it also talks about these special kind of fundings, traditional fundings. It also has a lot of financial ally contacts and information. So if there is a particular financing mechanism that you want to take advantage of, we have listed out financial allies in there. They have their contact information, what they expertise in. That information is available as well. This website also has a lot of tools and resources available, fact sheets. Our manufacturing industry who have worked with our financial allies, or they have done something unique in their facility to kind of finance these decarbonization projects, you can learn about those through their case studies. And I'll go through some of these case studies at the end of the presentation as well. So jumping into a couple of these funding mechanisms, right? So first, I'll start off with a very simple one, which is the internal funding. Here, essentially organizations set aside some funding that the company or facility managers can use to fund decarbonization projects. What it requires is a lot of engagement with the internal stakeholders like facility managers or engineers or process engineers and things like that. So they can kind of identify which projects to kind of fund for they need funding for to help decarbonization. It does demonstrate a commitment towards sustainability, but what it does, what the disadvantage is, it does not guarantee funding all the time. It's something that you have to compete through with other projects as well. Revolving fund is a kind of a different flavor of internal funding where from a capital fund, you get some money we call revolving loan fund. And what happens is you start off with a certain capital from the capital funding, and whatever projects that you do and the savings that you are generating from that project kind of goes into that internal fund, the revolving loan fund. That's the revolving part. It kind of replenishes after each project, not completely, even sometimes more or less, depending on what projects you're using it for. But what it does is you always have this money that you can spend towards decarbonization. But there are some disadvantage to that as well. Sometimes companies do not kind of want to lock up so much fund at one place. So that's kind of a thing. But if it's something that organization can set up, and we have partners who have set this up, this is a very good, easy mechanism to make sure that you have a dedicated amount of capital that you can use towards decarbonization projects. Going into a little more contracting and kind of not moving away from traditional like internal funding mechanisms, going into contracting and third-party financing is the first one I have here is energy saving performance contracting. This has been here in market for a long time, and it is evolving. It is evolving drastically with decarbonization being in focus right now. What essentially happens is an energy efficiency company would come and conduct an assessment for you, identify some opportunities and technologies, as well as rebates. And then, depending on what projects they identify, they basically make you kind of a package of projects that they would kind of work on. And what the customer would do is get funding to fund this project. Um, what happens is all these projects that you have identified and you would negotiate with this ESCO would kind of come with a performance guarantee. And what that means is you would agree on a certain saving threshold. And then the customer basically pays for the installment of the projects or installment of the technology, but the ESCOs are usually the ones that maintains, operates, repairs, takes care of that system. What happens is you are kind of moving that financial risk over to that company, because if the savings kind of falls before that performance guarantee threshold, the ESCO is supposed to be paying you back for that low kind of the fall. But what happens is it's a very good scheme where you can kind of fund multiple projects, and you can kind of set some standards of what are some of your requirements within your organization. These are often complex and take a little long time to kind of put in place. And then building ownership, if it's a facility that you are implementing, it is not your facility. You don't own that facility, it's a lease facility, it becomes a little bit complicated. But it kind of also increases the reliability of the operation. You don't have to worry that, okay, I have to make sure that the system is operating at a point of efficiency. Somebody else is kind of responsible for that. So this is a really good one. Kind of the same type as energy efficiency as a service. So here what customers do is they go into contract with the service provider, and what you are paying in energy efficiency as a service, EAAS, is you're paying for the energy efficiency. The service provider funds, owns the equipment, and manages the assets. All you are paying to that ESCO is essentially for that energy savings. It can be a long-term contract. It can be a short-term contract. So if there are facilities that are leased, this might be another good one. And that might be a good thing, but again, building ownership, those size limitations might be an issue. This is very much a newer concept, I would say. Again, many people have done this in the past, but it's more new, but it's again rapidly evolving. People are finding new, better, and new ways of using the service. But it also helps companies for off-balance sheet financing solution. What these two kind of do, as I mentioned, the difference between traditional procurement and these service contracts, what you're doing is essentially what I was saying is the performance risk of that project is kind of shifted to that contractor, either it's ESCO or whoever that company is kind of doing the installation. In traditional, what happens is you kind of identify a project, you fund it, you have to manage it and make sure that energy efficiency comes to you. And you get advantage of that, the cost savings, the energy reduction, and things like that, and you have to pay for it. Through these service contracts, what happens is you can get third-party financing or you can pay for it own, but that risk gets transferred to these contractors. They have to make sure that you are getting the service that you wanted, either in terms of energy efficiency or getting that equipment to run as efficiently, or maintaining that. That incurs cost as well. So somebody else is taking care of that, and you are getting the benefit of energy savings. I will say in some of these service contracts, part of the energy savings becomes goes into like paying for these services. So you don't get the entirety of that energy saving that reflects in your utility bill or in your budget. But what you're doing is, again, moving that performance risk over to your contractor. So I think these are, again, really good ways, mechanisms of using these service contracts. On-bill financing, this is regional based on where you are in United States. You might be part of or have on-bill programs. What happens is there is a third party, it can be either ratepayer funds or an investor who gives this money to utility to invest in energy efficiency, so SEM or a renewable energy program, something like that. And utility kind of sets up that program, right? And then the customer, what they do is they are paying an added line item or added money through their utility bills. It's an added cost on their utility bills. It is usually like the customer does not have to worry about these projects, like but they get the benefit of it. It's kind of similar to if you have heard of utility green tariffs. That's kind of what is happening. It's on-bill financing mechanism where the utility provides you with renewable energy, and you are paying on your utility bill, electricity bill, you're paying that extra money to make sure that you get that renewable energy delivered to you. The disadvantage of some of this is, depending on what project it is, it might not be available for all different kinds of projects. So it might be limited to the type of projects that you're looking for. If you stop paying for it and opt out of it, you won't get that advantage anymore. So again, it's a good one for lease space. If you have a lease space, then you want to take advantage of renewable energy. This is a good option to use because it's a tariff. It gets transferred to either the existing tenant, or you can carry it wherever you move if the facility ends up moving or something like that. The next one is power purchase agreement. With decarbonization, I think this is a term that everybody kind of knows. Essentially, it's an arrangement that you are doing with a third party who is going to develop, install, own, and operate these energy systems. Power purchase agreement is very synonymous to renewable energy purchase. So it can be a physical power purchase agreement or a virtual power purchase agreement, whatever that you're doing. And what happens is this developer has customers that funds these developments, and the customers get either the benefit of buying those RECs, or the renewable energy gets delivered to them. Again, power purchase agreements are very complex. Those are very complex contracting system. And then there's also sometimes risk of overpayment. And I'll explain that in a minute here. But for this, if you are looking for renewable energy procurement options, power purchase agreement is a very good way of going, because you don't have to invest in a renewable project. Somebody else is investing in it. You kind of buy into it, and then it also kind of helps you hedge against the kind of utility rate fluctuations. So what I mean by that is, usually what happens is, when you go into, for an example here that I have is a virtual power purchase agreement. What happens is, you go into a virtual power purchase agreement with the company, and what you do is you negotiate on what you call is a strike price. That is the cost that you are going to pay to that developer to make sure that you get renewable energy or RECs, whatever it is that you are buying from them. This company can sell the electricity or whatever the leftover is, or RECs, in the open market. If the strike price is lower than the market price, essentially the customer is making money. They get that money back. Again, some of these contracts might differ, but that's basically kind of the concept behind it. Depending on the contract you have, it might differ. And then if the strike price is lower than the market price, higher than the market price, then the customer has to pay back to the developer. So essentially, what happens, you get a lower utility rate, or you are basically hedging against that increase in utility rates if that happens in your area. And with renewable energy becoming more and more commodity that facilities are looking for, manufacturing industries are looking for, power purchase agreements are usually the way that they are going. I wanted to talk a little bit about internal carbon price. This is something that slowly more and more partners, at least Better Plans program partners, have started talking about. This is a mechanism by which you can pass along the cost of carbon to the emitters. And more companies are kind of signing on to internal carbon pricing. In a recent CDP report on the right here, you'll see that graph. There has been an increase in 50% of more companies are starting or planning on using an internal carbon price. Currently, the median price is about $25 per metric ton. It's an European price, but that's essentially kind of the price in Europe. If you have facilities in Europe, that's probably what they are hearing or using. There are different types of internal carbon price. So there is a shadow price. You might have heard some of these terms as well. And these terms are used interchangeably. So there is shadow price, carbon fee, or implicit price. And what these are, shadow prices, basically you are putting a cost to the carbon emissions, or a carbon fee is kind of same. You are putting a dollar amount per unit ton of CO2 equivalent that's emitted. Or an implicit price might be something that you would calculate based on the total carbon emissions over the total investment that you have to make to eliminate that carbon emissions. So there are different flavors, there are different ways people are using internal carbon pricing inside their organization currently. Um, Currently, again, as I mentioned, this is a report that McKinsey came out recently. The average around in 2020, it was sometime for help to help us move towards decarbonization, to encourage companies to invest more and more in low carbon energy, a low carbon solution, and not getting kind of locked into high carbon emission systems. What they have seen is about $40 to $80 was what was required in 2020 so far. Moving forward, I think I have the date wrong here, and I'll update it before I send off the slides. Moving forward between now and 2030, 2040, that price, I think it has to move forward. It has to increase to help push more and more companies towards this decarbonization. And they're looking towards somewhere from 50 to 100 is what would help. Carbon price vary by region. As I was saying, that number is for Europe. So it kind of differs by region. Also, there is no global standard currently to put a price on carbon emissions. So that is something many of researchers, many of these organizations, CDP, WRI, and all of these organizations are working towards. Currently again, as I said, in Europe, it's about 25, 27. In Asia, it's a little lower. Again, this graph on the right kind of shows you the different countries with different rates, and it's based on 2019. I'm sure things have changed a lot since 2019 on this price, but it kind of gives you an idea, or gives you a visual idea of the different um, um, industries on the x-axis, so real estate, energy, industrial, and then financial service, healthcare, insurance, all of that on the x-axis. And then on the y-axis, it kind of shows you dollar that you can, the cost you can use for internal. And then all of these different colors, dots, are the different countries or continents, so Asia, Europe, or America, or different regions. Green bond. This is also something which is very new, and companies are starting to kind of think through and investigate. We have one or two of our partners who either have or are working towards getting a green bond. What this is it's a fixed income instrument designed to support climate or environmental projects. It gives you tax incentives, and it can be applied to any kind of assets or investments, or even if you're doing R&D related projects that can help you reduce your carbon emissions, you can use this. It's almost like your earmarked money that you can use towards some of these categories. Again, I have links in the bottom that kind of gives you a little bit flavor and understanding of what green bond is, but you can use this money for funding renewable energy, energy efficiency projects, any projects that will help you um, reduce your emissions, or it can help you manage, like if you are a land sector use, make sure that you are using land and water or agricultural resources more sustainably, or you can use it to fund clean transportation, as well as circular economy. I'll give you an example at the end that I have for a partner, and they are using this to basically, because they manufacture products that require circularity. They are investing in R&D and circularity of their products. So they have a green bond that they're using towards that. It's, again, it's very brand new. That's still underdeveloped. It's still under development, and there are financial risks. Based on the market you are in, it might be something that is not available. Currently in the United States, there are organizations that are using this. But again, it offers tax incentive. It definitely demonstrates commitment. And then there are interest rates on this, but it's all lower than loans from a commercial bank. The one thing for these are sometimes these bonds do receive criticism of based on where they are being used. So many of our companies, we have heard, go through evaluation. And what that means is, they go through evaluations of these bonds to make sure that these bonds that these companies are buying, they are using these monies responsibly. I have an example from S&P Global Rating. They do what they called a shade of green. It was part of Cicero, and now it is part of S&P Global. It provides an independent research-based evaluation of green bonds and sustainability financing. And what they are trying to understand is, if I do get, say I'm a customer, I got a green bond, am I using that responsibility? So I have to put together where I'm using that money for, and they kind of give you this assessment of shades of green. The darker the green is, the more reliably you are using those funds. If you go to yellow and red, that's not what you should be using that bond for. So this is a way of, if you are thinking of doing green bonds, this is one way of getting it assessed, so that you can get more kind of support from stakeholders. It gives you more visibility to your stakeholders, and demonstrates your sustainability efforts, or you are responsibly using this bond money. Okay, with that, okay, sorry, I skipped one slide here. Financial consideration. When you are thinking about these third-party financing, there are a couple of things you have to keep in mind. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, but in general, you have to understand what the asset ownership is. Is it a leased asset or an owned asset? Depending on that, these financial mechanisms differ, which financial mechanism you would use. You can combine multiple projects for a better rate of return. And I'll show you an example later on how our partners have used this, kind of combining multiple projects so that they can make a better case to their upper management to fund some of these projects. Other than these financial mechanisms, there are also tax incentives, rebates, and fundings available. So that is something that you should be also looking for. If there are availability of these, definitely take advantage of those, because that helps you reduce your kind of financial burdens. Again, because for most of these third-party financing, you would require, if you are getting a loan or financing of certain sorts, you would need a good credit credibility. And that sometimes is kind of difficult for some companies, depending on what they have invested in and how financially they have invested, they might have debts that already are in the market, and then getting extra money from the market becomes a little more difficult. So as promised, I have a couple of case studies here from our partners to kind of go through and see how some of our companies, our Better Plans partners, are using these financial mechanisms. Before we get into financial mechanisms, one thing I think this is a very good example to share, and this is kind of a checklist. It's not a financing mechanism, it's a checklist, but I think it's a very good way to even start for any financial projects or any energy efficiency decarbonization projects that you are thinking in your organization. So Celanese Corporation, they are a chemical manufacturing company, and what they have done is they have come out with the sustainability checklist for capital projects. Any projects that uses capital funding, they not only have to demonstrate energy and GHG emissions reduction, but they also look into water and waste reductions as well, which is, I think, is a very holistic way of looking at this. This helps the partners, the stakeholders, the manager, energy managers, even the upper management kind of understand the impacts of these projects or changes that they are making within an organization. Very standardized way. Like you can literally kind of almost compare apples to apples at one point, where you understand which project has better sustainability impacts. They are optimized, they are used to make sure that the systems are optimized, and they're using the most efficient systems. And also it kind of prevents them from locking into high emission impact projects. And once you have gone through this exercise, what happens is it becomes so much easier to go and convince your upper management, hey, if you are looking for capital or internal funding or revolving funds, whatever you are doing, it kind of makes it so much easier to get those capital, because you have used a standardized process to kind of identify this project. The next one I have is Nissan North America's case study, modified payback requirement. What they did is, along with Better Plans Program and EPA, they kind of conducted a poll, for which they wanted to understand what is the threshold across different industry for a simple return on investment, simple ROI. And what they learned is it was somewhere between 1 to 2 years. This was a very good learning experience. They could understand what kind of projects were financed, what kind of return on investments, what different companies were looking for. And then what they did after that is they set aside a capital. They almost made it a revolving fund. And what they started doing is bundling some energy efficiency projects. And that's a very good way. Like if you have a higher payback projects, you can bundle two of them with a lower one, and you get to a middle sweet spot. And I think that helps not only get more projects approved, but it also helps kind of build that more morale, and build a very good pool of projects within your organization as well. So currently they have moved, and this is from some time back. I think this is from 2017, I think, this case study. And I think they have moved ahead than this. But when this case study was written, they moved from a year payback to 1.5 to 2 year payback, which is great. Again, like many of these projects got approved. And as I mentioned about that set aside fund, they started with 2 million, and now they have bumped it up to 6 million because they can see that return on investment, and they keep on bumping that a little bit at a time. General Motors did an energy saving performance contracting. So what they started off first, they started off internally, kind of setting a standard for their EPCs, energy performance contracting. They wanted long-term cost savings. They wanted to make sure that the building performance, customer like or occupant comfort was always good. They will not kind of do any compromise on that. And then anything that they did, any projects that would go under the EPCs would not only have energy reductions and carbon reductions, but also make sure that had like hazardous material disposal or recycling as being included. It increases occupancy comfort, reduces their maintenance need, improves indoor quality. They also wanted these to be short term. So they wanted them 5 years or less. And again, it should always make them, help them save money and long term. Once they kind of determined what the standards they needed for their EPCs, they went on and kind of categorized them as operational need, operational lease, where it would they would have operational control over them. They went ahead and contacted ESCOs, which is energy service companies, and then they basically paid upfront a little bit, and then they kind of shared the savings with the ESCOs. So part of the savings kind of went into that payment, and part of the savings were kind of absorbed into the organization. And couple of projects that they identified to do through these ESPCs where lighting retrofits, controls, wireless control of facility, HVAC controls, and things like that, which is kind of very neat, I feel like, because these are some things that are often looked over, but they have really good energy saving potential. AT&T used energy efficiency as a service. So they worked with our financial ally, Redaptive, to design an energy efficiency, energy as a service model. And what Redaptive paid for was project development, installation, and maintenance cost. And AT&T just paid for the energy based on energy that they saved. That's kind of the concept behind energy as a service. You're just paying for that energy efficiency piece. And the projects that they kind of did was lighting projects, again, advanced submetering and smart irrigation system for their water systems to reduce their water waste. The kind of different phases that they went through is their planning and audit. So through the planning and audit, they kind of identified the areas that they want to include in energy as a service. They then designed with Redaptive what kind of design would help them optimize and get the maximum energy efficiency or reductions in water use or anything else. So kind of they worked together. And then once that design was approved, they went into installation phase. After installation, it went into they went through customer review where the customer made sure, or AT&T made sure, like, okay, Redaptive has done everything that they had said they would do in the contract. And then after that, they started measuring and measurements of that energy savings. So this is kind of the workflow for an energy as a service. Again, it might differ how you do it. If you are going into doing this, it might change, but this is kind of how they usually happen. Electrolux recently did a green bond. Again, I think I have a link for there, and you can see what their financing framework is. But they kind of identified 5 eligible categories under green bond. So green bond, as I mentioned, they have different categories that you can use that money for. They identified these 5 categories that kind of aligned with their sustainability goal. So they have a carbon neutral goal of 2030, and they also want to reduce their Scope 3 emissions, so emissions across their value chain by 2050. So because of that, they identified some of these 5 things that would help them achieve that goal. So the first one was investing in more climate neutral or clean energy sources, more energy efficient operations, lead with energy efficiency and resource efficiency solution. And then, as I mentioned, because they make products that kind of uses natural resources, they wanted to offer the circularity of their product. That was another key area that they wanted to focus on. They also wanted to remove harmful materials from their product. That was another area that they want to focus on, and then support the sustainability development goals and climate goals. So they would do anything that they want that would support, they would fund anything that would help support those SDGs. And the right here, you can see kind of how they broke down that funding, whatever that they got in terms of percent. Most 70% went towards the driving towards that clean resource efficient operation, and then the rest kind of went into energy efficiency solutions, circular economy, and remove harmful materials from their operations. I think with that, I think that's my last slide. I know I went through a very fast. If I know Clifton have been putting really good links in the chat here, if I've missed any, so feel free to ask any questions that you might have.
Yeah, thanks, Palomi, so much. I mean, we'll give you a little break. I guess, you really covered a lot of different topics. I'll point out, as comprehensive as this was, there also is still, a host of state, local, and federal incentives out there that you can discover. I did put it in the chat a well-known database for state incentives, but you'll have to do a little bit of other research on your own, find out other incentives that are out there. But of course, we encourage you to kind of, take the time to kind of explore and see what's out there. Yeah, so please put questions in the chat. We only have a couple in there so far, but I can get started. One was just asking to follow up on the funding opportunity grant that I spoke about. You can go to iac.university. It's actually interesting because DOE for the first time is using a third party. It's called a partnership intermediary. Long story short, the application is actually a lot shorter than normal. I think one typical obstacle for applying for government funding opportunities is that it can be very complicated. But this new form is literally like 5 pages. It's a newer, more straightforward way to get grants for energy efficiency and clean energy projects. So, check out iac.university for more information. This opportunity ends on July 14th, but it's the first of multiple rounds. We have a total of $400 million available. This first round will be up to 80 million. So please, click on that link to explore more. The other question we had was, where is it? Yes, it was actually about ESCOs. It said, are there any tax advantages for ESCOs, and what are specific programs that you might be aware of out there?
I think there are links, and I think maybe Clifton, you had put it in here, but there are again a lot of resources that are available through that financial navigator that we have. It kind of talks about how to reach out to some of these ESCOs. What are some of the things that you should be considering when you go through? Yes, the DOE model document for using an ESCO. I think those are really good resources to get started on.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point to reiterate. That the Financing Navigator is pretty comprehensive, a really good outline of kind of everything that you've talked about here today, with the exception, I don't know if you have internal carbon price on there yet. I know it's kind of a new development.
I think there is a page. It's kind of a little hidden, but I think I put the link for that one. Because it's very early, it's still under development. I think there's a little less information available, but if anybody is interested in learning more about that, CDP has really good resources on that. WRI, I think, has really good resources, some of those resources on that as well. The other one I will say is, and I think I do have a link for that, we did recently, I think last week, Thursday or Friday, we did a webinar on internal carbon pricing. So we had 3 of our Better Plants program partners come in and talk about how they are using internal carbon pricing. So I think that is really good. So there's Saint Gobain and then Chemours. And then there was another one that I'm blanking on the name. Cummins, Cummins, who kind of came and spoke about what they're doing. And I think the easiest way I learn, I'm an engineer by profession, so I learn is through examples. And that's what we try to bring forward is how other manufacturing industry, how other partners are doing this. So I think that's another very good resource to look into. Again, I think I have the link in there. If you click the links, you'll find it there.
Right, and I'll point out that the recording for this webinar, the transcript, and the slides will all be posted online later. We don't have, not a question, but we have a comment. We might as well elevate from one of your colleagues at Oak Ridge, Senthil. He points out that efficiency as a service might work well for companies who are struggling to get energy efficiency projects in the CapEx budget. The cost for EaaS can come out of operations OpEx budget, which is much easier than CapEx. So that's a good point. We actually don't have any more questions as of now. But we can give people a couple of minutes. I don't know, Palomi, is there anything you want to add or expand upon?
I will say is through Better Plants program, again, it's a really good program that we help kind of run DOE. And I think a lot of these kind of questions are very common. Many of partners or companies are struggling with understanding how they would finance some of these things. So definitely, if you are part of Better Plants program, then reach out to your TAMs. They are amazing resources to help you. If you are not part of it, go to Better Buildings, Better Plants Solution Center page. It has so much resources that it's available there. We have webinars, we have tools, and we have resources. We have case studies that you can literally, not just the Financial Navigator, there's so much out there, information on that particular website. So again, if you have any question about that, definitely let me know. Can you explain a little bit more on Financing Navigator tool? Definitely. So this is basically a website that the Better Buildings, Better Plants kind of hosts in our, we host it in our solution center is what we call it. Again, I think Clifton put in a link there, but essentially what it does, it gives you, it has resources, and you basically can click through and learn about all the different financial ways of financing that is available currently in the market. Again, most common ones might not, if you have one-offs there, I don't think we have those, but all the common ones are there. You kind of learn about what those different mechanisms are, kind of more detailed than what I went through here. But what it also has, it has financial allies. So there are companies that we have listed out in there that kind of talks about and tells you what are their financial mechanisms that they kind of expertise on, and you can reach out to them depending on the region, depending on the project, depending on the kind of things that you are looking for. So we have a kind of very good list going on there. That I think was a more recent addition. When I first started using it, I don't think it had, but they have added more and more, and they're continuously adding more to it. The other good thing that it has a lot of case studies, implementation models is what we call, of how actually partners are using things. So kind of example what I kind of went through today, and showcasing some of our partners. So we write case studies with them so that everybody can learn from what is happening, how they're doing it. And I think that's one great way. So it's really useful tool to use.
We had another question about the slides and the recording. They'll be posted online. There's actually a MESC YouTube page where I know the recording will be posted. And I believe the slides will be posted online as well. I will actually make, you made a plug for Better Plants, so I'll plug again the ISC program. So this is
Yes.
another opportunity for small, medium-sized manufacturers. The ISCs, again, go to isc.university to learn more. But they provide no-cost, free energy assessments for small, medium-sized manufacturers. So as long as your annual budget is less than annual revenue of less than $250 million, I believe, you're eligible for a free energy assessment. A qualified team will go into your facility, kind of assess energy efficiency opportunities, renewable energy options, and kind of provide recommendations. And now, thanks to this grants program that we also have, you can get funding from DOE to implement those recommendations and to improve your facilities. So yeah, go to IAC.university to learn more. Four more. No more other questions right now, I don't think. Paloma, any closing thoughts?
No, thank you for having me. I really had fun kind of presenting on this topic. This is a very important topic to discuss, and I think many of manufacturing partners need help with understanding what kind of financing can help them as they're thinking about decarbonization. So I think this should be useful to some people, and if it is not, I think I've shared enough links in there so that people can at least find some part of it useful. So I'm really happy that this is being discussed.
Someone was asking about the YouTube channel that I mentioned. I just put in, just double checked. Yes, that is the correct YouTube link if you want to see MESC webinar recordings. All right. Well, with that, we'll give people back 4 minutes of their day. Palomi, thanks again for joining us. Thank you all for joining us. And be on the lookout for more news.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, well, real quick, one more. What's the estimated time it takes for funding to turn around?
It depends on what you are doing. Internal fundings usually have, like, you have to submit those projects, and there's your internal funding cycle. If it's external, it depends, depending on the complexity. As I mentioned, I think all of them are very complex. Power purchase agreements can take somewhere between, depending on how big it is, physical power purchase agreements and stuff like that. It takes about sometimes 2 to 3 years, if not more, usually more, not less. But even the ESCOs and things like that, I think it takes long. It takes about a year to at least understand, kind of find the right person to do these and make sure jump through those hoops. So I think that's how it happens, but it depends. But it is very complex. One thing I will recommend is having somebody who understands some of these technology as well as the financial aspects of these things. I think these two things need to start marrying, like getting together more, coming closer together. Because I'm an engineer, so I can speak for myself. Like, for an engineer to understand financing and for finance people to understand engineering sometimes becomes a little bit difficult. So as soon as you kind of put them together in early in the project, it helps so much faster.
So now the question is about whether we have templates or steps for the process.
I do not know about this. Let me see if there is any. I do not think there are general steps for expectations out there that I have seen, but I might be wrong.
I will say, I think on the Navigator, they do have some fact sheets, that
Gotcha.
they explore all these things
Yes,
that you talk about in more detail. So
agreed.
if you go to the Navigator, there will be some additional resources and detail. And I think contacts as well to follow up with, like, if people have more questions about this kind of thing.
Oh, sorry.
And then now Sharon is asking questions. It's good. We have a couple of
Yeah.
minutes left. So what about advising and coaches experts who can work with new teams on this topic? Any ideas there?
Um, so I'm hoping these are advising and coach experts. Again, because I'm from Better Plants, I would say, like, if you have some of these technical experts, there are a lot of good webinars. Like, I don't know if I can say any particular company or anything like that, but one again, as I mentioned before, like as soon as you can find these two engineering and finance groups, get them married together as soon as you can early in the process, and I think that helps. So
And yes, the webinars will be on the DOE website. Yes, I can confirm that. So,
thank you,
with
Sharon.
yeah, yes, thank you, Sharon. We're glad you're interested in this topic. It's 3 o'clock. Thank you all. Thank you, Palomi. It's been a really educational webinar.
Thank you.